Welcome to rHatchery Live. I'm Jose Leal, and my regular co-host Matt Perez is not here today, but we've got Will or Guillermo, one of our colleagues working with us for over a year now, doing some of the tech work as well as being part of our community in Mexico. Today, as a guest, we have Rijon Erickson. Rijon is spelled differently. So where does that come from, Rijon? How do you get a name spelled like that?
Well, I call it Davidian because my dad's name is David, and it is based on a Norwegian heritage. We a couple generations back. It is not a legit name from the canon of Norway, but it is. My dad was an art professor, so he
Okay.
decided to bless me with
He
his
made it up.
creatives. He made it up, gave me this creative gift that I have only recently learned how to use properly. So yeah, that's where it comes from.
So the
Super
show's
nice.
producer, Carlos, is loves Norway, is learning the language and is hoping to move there someday. So maybe that's a conversation that you guys need to have.
Most definitely, yes.
So, Ryan, tell us a little bit about you personally. Where you been? What have you done? And then a little bit about what you're doing professionally and why we want to talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, who I am is I'm at my core a musician, and I come from an artistic background. I said dad was an art professor. I grew up in rural Indiana in the late 70s at Terre Haute, Indiana State University. Larry Bird, basketball kind of mode. I learned about jazz music at a very young age, and went throughout school and into college and got a jazz studies degree and as a bass player. As you can see my stuff here. From there, I went into professional life selling musical equipment, computer-based stuff, then moved into a IT role at a local utility in Cincinnati at the time. So, and then I basically was chomping on the blue pill for 25 years of working in what I now call, the industrialized capitalistic authoritarian mode. I think you call it the fiat mode. So
Exactly.
I was a serf in the fiat mode for 20 years. Then as I exited that, I had this bug for freedom. I wanted to get out. I moved to started to feel my way in as a unique kind of person in the world, this purple squirrel thing we may talk about, just being different. And as a musician in IT, I didn't know how to articulate myself. So kind of went through that mode and got a gig in the agile software development world. I'd learned about agile software development, and I'd also learned about open space technology, and I started facilitating open space. And my trainer open space kind of got me into this other way of doing organizational transformation. I got so excited about it, and then I got cancer. So I went through this as I was starting to rise into this new way of working and being. I got cancer beginning of May of 2019. So I went on a journey through that time. I was wearing masks in the hospital before COVID happened. Then I come out the next year. I've landed into a world I no longer recognize. I'd lost my entire work identity, lost my network, and was rudderless. And there were a lot of ahas from that led me to realize that the world that I grew up in and that had been created for me, the game I was playing, was not the game that needed to be played in the world. And so I got the bug for freedom and sovereignty as a worker in the world. And then I embarked upon trying to make that happen as a freelancer. I got a couple gigs in freelance, and I had met along the way when I learned about open space. I learned it from a guy named Daniel Mezek, who had this open space agility mode. I learned about agile software development and then open space agility, using open space and self-organization and democratized work and all this kind of stuff for agile. Then that led me to meet a guy named Niels Flagging, who was using that who was using that mode of open space, bringing a concept to an organization with something called the BetaCodex. which is very much in tune with, what you talk about here is about decentralizing organizations, is about doing performance in a different way, about doing all these things that honor human dignity, honor human nature, honor the human spirit, and it just, as I met Niels and got into the BetaCodex and the whole work the system approach, which is how you make BetaCodex and the principles of BetaCodex happen in an organization, it all made sense to me. And and as I do, because I came from the jazz world, I see this all from a musical perspective, and we can go into that, but
Yeah.
it's all about liberating the human spirit in pursuit of joyful togetherness at work. So
Awesome. So, first of all, sorry to hear about your episode in 2019. So many of my friends and colleagues have suffered over the last few years with diseases and death, and it's always difficult to deal with those things. So, wow, glad you're here with us today. The question that comes to mind, though, is: do you think that you'd be here talking about this if it hadn't happened?
it would be different. It would be probably less intense, because that hospital experience, it stripped me of all of my autonomy. And I went through this period of surrender, right? And what was I surrendering? I had been surrendering for 20 years to other people's demands on me, and then I lose bodily autonomy, and then I'm at risk. And I get to this point where, what is this all about? If it is not about, I don't want to come out of this experience, or if I'd not had the experience, I wouldn't have had this awareness that, I don't have to press the checkbox that says use all the default settings for your life and your world. So I probably would have been playing the game for a while, yeah, and just trying to do open space with Agile. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's all right. But losing my autonomy, losing that sense of, my humanity. I had no shame. I lost the sense of shame when I was in the hospital. And I've kind of turned that into a deep conviction about, regardless of what you may think ideologically about the other person that you're in front of, with, that you're talking with, they're a human being too, and they have dignity, and that us being together in the human spirit, that's what this is all about. All this, there is more to life than work. And if nothing else, I was taught to value that, because I have no shame, no job, no nothing. But what I do have is a love of human beings and a love of humanity, and a want to be with people, not over people, not exerting power on them. I want to understand people from their deepest humanity and be with them in that place. So would I have gotten there if I'd not gone through cancer and COVID and the summer that killed everybody, and that broke everybody's brains? And probably not. I might have gotten here eventually, but I'm actually grateful for the experience.
I asked that question because I know I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had a similar experience. And it wasn't my health, but it was much of everything that you've just said. For me, it was 25 years as well. Most of it in a corporate environment, and getting to the point where I realized I didn't have a life, that I was just, my life was my job. And it's those situations where we hit that wall that often takes us down the different path, right? I'd like to take us back to something you said early about the fact that you were doing Agile, because both Will and I have a lot of views about Agile and what Agile is today and what it was intended to be. What are your views on Agile? And I'd like Will to jump in as well and maybe point out what his views are.
Well, that's a complicated question. Or it's a complex question. It's a complicated, all the kind of stuff. So when I met Daniel, right, he had written this article, this blog post back in 2016 about the Agile Industrial Complex and the Agile imposition, and then how what came out of Snowbird in 2001 really that changed so much in the years that the consulting groups picked it up and top management picks it up and says, you got to do Agile. You must do Agile in this way. And we're going to do it. We're going to hire consultants. McKinsey's going to, all this garbage around imposing upon people, as opposed to the spirit of invitation of what was Agile about? Was it really about doing twice the work in half the time, Mr. Sutherland? I don't think it was. And I think what gave me hope about that, because when I came out of cancer, I was like, what is Agile for anyway? Why are we doing this? Why is this? And I went back to the manifesto for Agile software development, right?
Yes.
This is not like, and what gave me hope was the history of it, the Jim Highsmith history page. And I read through it and I said, Jim's talking about something deeper. Jim's talking about, he was really hinting at that humanity, the individual's interactions over processes and tools. And customer collaboration following. We all know the 4 and 12, but Jim had this narrative through there that really spoke to the fact that that the humanity of the work was draining out. And that's what I connected with. And that if I'm going to be in the Agile space, that's the kind of space I want to be in. I don't want to teach people about SAFe. I don't want to teach people about Scrum. Those are all tools, right? I'm not about the tools. If you believe in Agile, whatever that happens to mean anymore, it's about connecting to people's humanity and opening space, inviting them to work in the way that they deserve to work so that they can experience joy, right? That's where I am with Agile right now at this moment. So
I totally agree with you. The Agile changed a lot when we add the trademark on the top, because all the way we're working, the way we work is based on the factory. So I think that Agile means, okay, don't do a factory of everything. So you can go to the roots, do a radical change in the way you work with simple communication, and find a better way to do it. Is what the manifesto said. We are looking for a better way to build in software. But the thing is, we are looking. It's not we have. It's not we discovered. It's we are always on the quest to find it. So,
uncovering.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question regarding to something you mentioned before. Is when you came out of the hospital, you said, I lose my identity. I tried to connect that with something that I know, with my previous knowledge. And I think you refer to the fact that people find their identities through the work they are doing, through their professions. What are you? Okay, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer. So how can we overcome that label? Because I understand it's how we give value to the society. That's fine. But how can we overcome that? Or it's something that really intrigues me. How can we get that label off and not avoid the starting like I'm a human being? Okay, it's obvious. So what's next?
Well, if my take on it, and just say I'm curious about what you said. I'm trying to say it well. When I talk to people, because I've done a lot of, as I came back into, after I lost I was an Agilist, Scrum Master, blah, 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 project manager, program manager, and then all this crap. And that was, my identity, like you're saying, the work identity, it fell away. And I came up with this whole purple squirrel thing. And that's just kind of what is that? what that is that is I'm skewing the label just for me. But when I talk to people, I think this is how do you get past that? I identify with my work. Well, I don't want to know when I talk to you. I really don't want to know what you are. I don't want to read the label on your bottle. I want to know who you are, and I want to connect with who you are and how you are, and what's the beautiful nectar, of your humanity, as opposed to what's on the glass manufactured bottle. So it reminds me, there's, again, one of my favorite quotes. I'm a big quote guy. And it's a quote from a conceptual artist named Robert Irwin. And it's seeing is forgetting the name of the thing you see. And I think that's beautiful, because I don't, even your name, right? Your name, we identify the most basic thing about our name, and that's kind of what I learned about too, is that I'll tell you my name, but who are you? What do you believe, and how can we connect eye to eye, heart to heart, spirit to spirit in this moment? And that's how I approach getting to know people. And that has proven to be, we just want to create beauty together. I don't want to transact with you. I want to transform with you. So.
Right. We like to call it impact. Right. Because at the end of the day, that's what drives most of us. It's making an impact of some kind. We don't want to go through life being unseen, leaving no footsteps.
Yeah.
Right. We want to make things better. And that's what work was always about. Was about making that impact. It was a way of collaborating. It was a way of doing something that was impacting others, impacting society, impacting my family, your family. But somehow we've lost all that. And we've become a society of work that is strictly driven by, as you said, the fiat system, a system of control, a system of dictate, a system of hierarchy. And so let's talk a little bit about what is the system of BetaCodex, and how does that translate to a lot of what we talk about in Radical?
Again, the BetaCodex specifically, again, the laws of the BetaCodex, there are 12 laws or 12 design principles or patterns that make up the BetaCodex, this kind of a paradigm, right? But what it's really about is about building and developing organizations that are not only fit for complexity, as we are. We are in a complex world. We are. I mean, the world is moving faster and faster and faster. Rapid complexity. So building organizations that are fit for complexity and fit for humanity. Right. So fit for human beings. So that wasn't necessarily the way our pyramidal organizations were built. And so the BetaCodex principles, we would bring them in our consulting at Red 42. We bring them to organizations through this work the system approach, which is open space in iterations to allow experimentation by invitation to again, what is more engaging than making decisions? So people deciding the work to do. And this open space beta, relative targets, which is a different way of doing performance measurement as opposed to planned actual measurement, doing actual to actual measurement. So there's that. And then there's this idea of cell structure design, which is going from a triangular organization, hierarchical, to a spherical organization. And how do you do that? And why do you do that? Well, the principles of the BetaCodex, several of them are about market steering versus hierarchical steering. So is someone at the top telling you where to go? Or are you and your organization being steered into what a customer need is based on the market? The market is doing the steering. And how does the market do the steering? Through autonomous teams, through egalitarian democratic leadership, through, instead of positional authority, through mastery-based authority. And so those are just those are 4 principles that are part of those 12 principles of the BetaCodex. And so there's more about value creation, there's more about transparency. So all of these principles come together in this delicious soup of decentralization and market steering. So that's very, at a very high level, what it's about. I mean, I could go into all 12 principles.
Yeah.
But I think that's the core of what drives it for me. And also one of the principles is rhythm, kind of having an organization that swings, with the market, as opposed to having this cadence, quarterly cadence, monthly. We're gonna report to shareholders because that. No, if the market is steering, you swing with the market, right? It's natural. It's human. So that's, again, at writ large, that's what the BetaCodex is about.
So in Radical, what we talk about is that there's the issue of, first of all, human nature isn't dealt with in traditional businesses, so we don't really understand that people are about meaning and belonging, along with a number of other needs, and we don't take care of those needs, and so we force people to work together when they're not necessarily compatible with one another. We tear people apart when they are compatible with one another. We do all kinds of things that have nothing to do with understanding human nature.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we do is recognize that one aspect of human nature is that the autonomy that we need can't exist in an environment where there is a boss or an owner. And so the co-ownership, as well as co-management, which I think is what you've kind of described, a slightly different model of self-management or co-management.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking you is, do you guys look at an ownership piece at all as part of the model that you're describing?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you deal with conditional income? Conditional income in traditionally managed organization is from bonuses. It's from incentives. It's carrot and sticking people, right? And it's paying for that performance, right? Well, if you flip that and pay the person, right, and if you're organized in small teams that have mastery, that are very democratic and consequent with each other and accountable to each other, as opposed to being accountable to that, then you have a participative, that the conditional income is from participation. And that if the profit that's created for the organization is distributed amongst the organization, on top of a good salary, you're paying the person, and that doesn't mean everyone makes the same, everyone does the same. Yes, there are different levels of pay in a beta organization, but realize that we're not talking about bonuses. This is where the fixed and relative targets piece of the BetaCodex comes in. But yeah, participation is vital and core.
But still not ownership.
Well, the ownership is an interesting thing, because there's a legal requirement. You have to have named owners as they are in certain jurisdictions now, and hierarchically you have to name people a certain thing because of legal compliance, right? But the ownership, you're spot on. It is shared ownership, I think, in principle, and that. Yeah, I think there's some distinctions that Niels probably would make from that, but the way we talk about it in the consulting is about the relative targets and participative conditional income.
Interesting. One of the things that I know that Will and I have gone a lot back and forth on is how do you change culture? How do you, in an organization that's got a bunch of people that have been taught all of their educational career that what they're going to do is be an employee.
Mhm.
And if they're lucky, they can tell somebody else what to do, but also be told what to do. So how do you change that mindset? How do you sit in with the organizations that you work with, and get folks to, be it radical or BetaCodex or agile, all of those things are about a mindset shift, or what I like to say, a change of lens.
So that's a very interesting, and Niels has some very specific points, and I take a lot of inspiration from him in that. But when we talk about culture and changing the culture, are you really if the culture is people like us do things like this, right? And the things like this that we do are a system. We are a human system, right? And so the culture of who we are, or people like us do things like this, that system produces artifacts and outcomes that are, through Conway's law, that structure, that system, that informal system around that. Now, and at the basis of it, how do you change culture? Well, how do we change these people? How do I say that this is the mindset you must have without being impositional? Because and I think you're speaking to that. Well, you need to have this agile mindset. If you don't have this agile mindset, you don't have Carol Dweck's growth mindset, you are wrong, and you need to be out of here. You get in the bus or get out. And that is in and of itself kind of a violation of human nature. If you think about that. Yeah. So one of there are some core thinkers that inspire the BetaCodex, one of which is Douglas McGregor. And I think this is the human side of enterprise. And that's really, there are no theory X people. It is folks, managers who think this theory X carrot and say, people are lazy, right? People will only do what we want if we incentivize them specifically, monetarily. But really, I think you're talking about this too. There's the theory Y mindset, what do you believe about human nature, right? We believe that people want to do well at their nature, and people want to work with each other. This is about, I think you mentioned too, about you want to have power over people. That's inhumane. You want to have power with people. You want to manage together with them. And one of the other thinkers of the BetaCodex that came out of that is Mary Parker Follett, who is a management thinker that was around that period of when Taylor came. And she was totally about power with and democracy and all this wonderful stuff. And she was so tragically disrespected, I think, because she was a woman in that time. But if you think about Follett, you think about McGregor, and you think about what's possible is this, being an ensemble, power with, what's the source of power? It is our mastery and what we can create, not some positional garbage. So yeah, it's kind of a long way answer around how do you change culture, but you don't. No, you don't change culture. You work the system, not the people.
Yeah. In what it comes to my mind when I hear you is, and I share it, is because I am living it. First, well, I'm not sure if you believe that, but I don't believe that there is such thing as human nature. What we have is, I don't know, inertia from the people doing some things from many years ago. So we can think that is natural, but maybe it's not. Who knows? But what I take from your comment is, if we start changing what is happening around the people, they will start adopting or rejecting. And in that adoption or rejection of the people, you will build something new. Maybe it's not how you imagine it, but that's the magic of being agile, is to welcome changes, and even when the changes are in the result that you are expecting. And I love what you said. Well, my question is, do you have any story to tell about a change that you made in your organization that triggers, I don't know, adoption from the people inside, and in time you saw a change in some story about it?
Well, the story I have to tell is it's a small scale story.
Yeah.
That I have. It's not necessarily this big, but it is indicative of this whole idea of power with and having grace from someone who has positional authority. And that, so I was on this huge hundreds of millions of dollar project in this little segment of it. And this project, we were behind schedule. People, you need to do this report. You're behind this. So many defects. That, all this stuff, and pointing at this. Blah blah blah. And at one point, and I came in and said, well, we are not going to get where you want us to go. And if we just continue to play this game of following this culture, following this plan, right? Respond to change versus following the plan. So this is about taking a leap and suspending your disbelief. And I'm asking you as a human being to our sponsorship and to the management in this program. And please, I don't know if I pleaded with him, but trust. If you trust us, we will deliver for you. And then he gave us that cover, right? And it's fiat organization, right? But this supervisor, we had built trust with him. We trusted him to give us that fertile soil that we could grow the relationships in the team and be an ensemble and have rich conversations about where we differed and where we agreed, and that it was this growing of creativity with that team. And I think that turned me into this mode to see that transformation happen, right? We were being told to soldier on in this one way, but we exerted our authority to say, and I was, again, for good or for ill, I was the one who knew about Agile, and say, we can do this differently. And because you trust us to do it, we'll make that happen for you. And we did. So that was what inspired me. And that's I think a micro story of organizational change.
No, it's super cool, because I have the similar story with a large corporation. Now we are one of the few, or maybe the only one in that working for them, that are not complying all the rules, and our software is thriving in the organization and is causing an impact. Is that the alarm?
Yeah.
So it is immortalized now.
I'm trying to mute myself here, but yes, it was the alarm. It was in
No
the other
problem.
room.
That's great.
I want to contradict both of you guys, or at least offer a different perspective.
I'm ready.
Bring it on. First of all, Ryan, are you able to run a few more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
I think we're having a great conversation. I'd love to just wrap it up properly.
Sure.
What you said about you can't change people, you need to change systems. I would mostly agree with that, but I think we can change what people are made of. And people are made of stories. We're all made up of beliefs, of understandings, of views. And when we can share with one another a different perspective, a different understanding, a different view of the world, then we can change. And historically, it is these new ideas that have been shared that create a new lens, that create a new perspective. And that does change things. And I think, in my experience, even in corporate world, people who could tell that story within the context of that fiat paradigm, were better able to create a culture, again, with all the limitations of that paradigm, we're better able to create a culture that was at least a healthy culture within an unhealthy environment. But I don't think it's one or the other. I think it is both.
I think we're having a semantic difference around how do we define culture. I think that's important to know and the way you're defining it sounds like, well, that you're inviting a group of people with authority in fiat to suspend their disbelief, right? To loosen those beliefs. And it's not about, you got to loosen those beliefs, man. If you don't loosen those beliefs, we're going to lose money. No, that's about, maybe this is less about a belief about human nature, because we can all change about that, but it's about respecting the dignity and the personal sovereignty of the other, if they are not you.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. Again, yes. So if you have authority, you're living in that system, what story can you do, that leadership storytelling, right? To say, this is the story we are writing together, right? I'm not going to write it and tell you to act it out line by line. We have written the introduction, and we are going to write the first chapter in the next 90 days of our cycle. And then we're going to see how that chapter works out at the end of that, and repeat. That's open space agility. That's open space beta. That's Prime OS. Yeah, we are. We are telling stories together. And now, especially in this age of a large language model that has chewed up all the information in the world and spits it back at us if we prompt it, it is deeply upon us to tell our human stories to each other and be with each other and in this shared spirit. This is the liberation of the human spirit in pursuit of joyful togetherness, right?
Said like a true radical.
I'm proud to have entered the circle and be happy to play more.
That's awesome. I don't know if Will has another question, but I'll let Will ask another question if he has one. If not, I would prompt you for wrapping up with anything that you think you wanted to really say and you haven't had a chance to say it. But Will, do you have anything else?
No, you say it, because I only want to rant about some definitions and and some point of view. But I will have, we can have more time later to discuss and rant about things. So go ahead, Ryan, please.
Wow. So I guess more about than the BetaCodex, which is kind of this articulation of beliefs, and Prime OS and all these kind of tools and ways of making sense of how to do change. I mean, it totally comes down to the music for me. And what do I mean by that? It is to engage with people with humble grace and breathless awe. I stand in reverence of the beautiful mystery of the human spirit. And if you navigate relationships with people into the desire to give love, inspire hope, and create beauty, that is the work worth doing. And I would offer that to anyone who hears this, is that if you navigate with the spirit of hope and love, faith, hope, love, peace, love, and music, I mean, to be with people that you can release those fears. You can move from, this space, right? The space between stimulus and response. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and that space in it is an invitation. It's an invitation to choose between fear and love. And every time, I'm going to choose love when I'm faced with that invitation, and I know it will help me create beauty for other people in the world. So that's what I want to leave with.
That's a beautiful way to end a wonderful conversation.
It is.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining us, for bringing us all that you've brought us, for taking the journey you've taken and being where you're at. I want to tell the folks who are listening and watching that next week we have Patrick Hill. And Patrick is about Agile. So we'll dig a little deeper into Agile. Maybe we'll have to have Will back so that he can ask some of those good ranting Agile questions. Again, Rijon Erickson, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a radical at work. And thank you for doing the work that's worth doing, but needs to be done. So that is very much appreciated. So goodbye. Thank you, Will, for taking the time to join me here today and cutting your teeth on our Hatchery Live. You're now ready to host all by yourself, ready to go.
I don't know. I'm not ready, but I'll do my best.
Well, remember, I do BetaCodex Live every week with Niels. We're in it, and so watch me there, and I'll watch you. I'll watch you guys, and this is
make sure
fantastic.
to give us that link so that we can put that on the show notes.
You bet.
Awesome.
Perfect.
All righty. Thank you again, guys, and we'll see you next week.
See you.
See you.
Goodbye.